Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 4 stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under our @Karma Stories podcast handle. Today's episode is sponsored by my 3D printing website. Visit dangly3d.com where you can get your hands on your very own 3D printed Carmen Chameleon Karma Stories mascot. We also have dragons and keychains and fidget toys on there. Check it out at dangly3d.com. Alright, on to today's stories. Let's jump right in. This story comes to us from fmintar1. So you think you know more than me? I, 34 male, had always been doing multimedia for my church for years and years, so displaying lyrics and creating PowerPoint slides are second nature to me. I was scheduled to take care of the multimedia this morning, so as usual, I came and created what's needed. I set up all of the lyrics, Bible verses, and the slides that were sent from the speaker before I went to the restroom. When I'm back, I saw the guy who usually plays the bass, Nate, but he wasn't on schedule today. He was having a conversation with another person behind the multimedia station. I went back to my station and started pre-displaying everything on the screen to make sure that I can read everything. So that's what I did before I noticed that Nate is looking at my station. 5 minutes before we start, Nate suddenly asked what I prepared. I showed him everything, the lyrics, the Bible verses, the slides, just to satisfy his curiosity. Side note, I don't really like Nate for several reasons. He believes in a lot of conspiracies people shared on social media, and when someone questioned him, he argued non-stop. Most of us just tried to avoid starting a conversation with him entirely, including me. Also, whenever he's scheduled to play bass, he tuned his amp volume quite high, higher than the other musical instruments that I can feel the vibration every time he plucks his bass. And the multimedia station is at the very back of the room. He's just super obnoxious. Apparently, his obnoxiousness is at a high rate today, because as soon as he saw the slides I prepared, he said that the font size is too small. He didn't say, it might be too small. No, he said, it's too small. I told him that it's fine, it's the regular font size we all use week after week, but he wouldn't drop it. By this time, the service started, but for some reason, he didn't go to find an empty seat in the audience. Rather, he sat on a stool behind my station, while repeatedly telling me that the font is too small. By this point, I was listening to his font mantra behind me while displaying the lyrics for the singers. After a couple minutes, I asked him if he's planning to sit with the audience, and I kid you not, this is his response. OP, your font is too small. You need to increase it. I can't believe it. He's so fixated on my slide's font size that he refused to leave me alone until I fulfill his wishes. By this point, even the pastor's wife asked him to please have a seat in the audience, in which he told her that it's better for him to sit there, because if he sat in the audience, he wouldn't be able to see anything. I had enough. Malicious Compliance initiated. While still controlling the displayed lyrics, I also edited the slides while he watched, so I'm multitasking. Mind you, the service has already begun, so I can't actually display the slides just to make sure. I increased the font so big that the slides look ridiculous. Before, there were only 10 slides, and one slide could contain 6 to 7 lines of 2 to 3 Bible verses with a translation section below it. Now, there is about 40 slides with 15 plus lines that contain only 6 words each. I can barely fit the translation part, and each slide could only contain 1 verse. It looked totally atrocious. After witnessing his destruction, he patted me on my back, gave me a thumbs up, and went to find an empty seat. I looked at the pastor's wife, and even she shook her head. During the sermon, it was extremely awkward. The speaker was having difficult time reading from the screen because he kept pausing after each line. I also have to switch the slides quicker than before because each only consisted of 1 verse, which interrupted the speaker's pace. After 10 minutes, the speaker gave up and just read from his own Bible, which most audiences follow suit. I witnessed many audiences pull up their Bible app from their phone and just read from there, even Nate. I texted Nate, "Why are you reading from your phone? I thought you wanted the font bigger so you can read from the screen." And in response, he turned and glared at me silently. After the service was finished, the speaker approached me and asked if everything was okay, because the slides didn't look like what I usually made. The pastor's wife approached us, was very apologetic, and explained everything. Then we looked for Nate, in which we couldn't find him in the crowd. I guess he was too embarrassed to admit his monstrosity. You know, there's another way to handle this one. OP could have just thrown their hands up, said to everybody there, "Okay, Nate will be handling the presentation from here on in," and just walk away. This is really a case of you have your job and I have mine. I'm not telling you how to play your bass guitar, so you cannot tell me how to do my slides. This story comes to us from GoNuts27. Can't carry over one PTO day? See you in February. I worked for a 24-hour news organization, so someone needs to be in the studio at all times. As a staff monkey, I had things like PTO and vacation time, which I usually didn't use too often, but we were allowed to carry over 5 unused days each year, as long as we used those days in the first quarter of the following year. However, the end of the year is in high demand for off time, because most people needed to burn unused vacation time they couldn't carry over. Management wisely makes sure everyone knows the policies and schedules of December well in advance so there aren't any last-minute issues around the holidays. Since I didn't use a lot of my PTO during the year due to built-up comp time and overtime, I generally used it the week between Christmas and New Year's, and took about 10 days off around then. One particular year, I had 6 days left, 1 extra day. But since I already took off the time between Christmas and New Year's already, there literally wasn't a day left for me to use as a day off, as no one was left to cover a shift if I were to take off. I went to the scheduler and management and asked for either a one-time exception to carry over the extra day, and I'd take it on January 2nd, extending off time by 1 day. No go, or pay me 1 day's wages for the unused time, also a hard no-go. Here's the malicious compliance. Since I had so much built-up PTO due to working holidays or comp time for overtime work, I had a ton of other days banked. Combining my already booked holiday break with my 5 carryover days and the 10 new ones I got for the new year, plus some holidays that come in the early part of the year, I figured I was able to take enough time off that I would leave for my Christmas break on 12/24 and not return until the last week of February, nearly March. And since I did it with enough notice, they couldn't deny me. They now have to cover about 2 months of my shifts. The next day, I put my time off in the system and emailed the scheduler a note saying, "Have a great holiday, I will see you in March." The following day, I receive a call from the VP of the department asking me what they need to do. I said simple, "Let me carry over my extra day. I will use it on January 2nd. You have almost a month to cover 1 shift, and we're all good." I got the carryover day, and I used it. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Megger66. It says, "Why was there at first not enough notice to take January 2nd off? But then you were able to submit it as part of your 2 months. It's still the same length of time away." OP responded and said, "That was my point from the beginning. I would have used the extra carryover day for January 2nd. When they originally said I couldn't carry it over, my response was to use every other PTO and new day that was given after the new year started, to take off not only January 2nd, but then every day I could after then, which would have had me off until nearly March, as opposed to the 1 day, which is eventually what happened." I don't think the commenter understood that part of the story fully, because the way I understood it was, they weren't letting OP carry over that 1 extra day. It had nothing to do with being too soon to book off January 2nd. So OP decided that they would use all of the days that they could use in the new year to take that day off, plus a bunch of other ones as well. OP did mention in another comment down below that they were glad that they were able to carry over that day eventually and take January 2nd off, because they didn't want to use all of their PTO days and other available days that would make them not available for the rest of the year. This story comes to us from Malami2111. I think I did my first malicious compliance yesterday. Yesterday was a weird day and I was a tiny bit shaken. I'm not sure I did my first malicious compliance or not, so tell me if it wasn't. There's my company and there's the other company, and both cooperate once in a while. In my company, I'm one of 2 people who have a monthly ticket for trams and buses. The rest travels by cars. The other company is in the old city zone where only cars with an official permit can travel and park. So if my boss needs any person to go there, it is my coworker or I. 2 days ago, he asked me because I was around while the colleague was on lunch break. I was to deliver some documents. It is faster than hiring a courier because a courier must take a package to a warehouse where it is registered and then it goes out. So it could take a whole day if a courier picks it up late. And if my colleague or I go to the other company, it's only 45 to 60 minutes. The way my boss explained, I was to go to the other company and they set a time interval of 3 to 3:30, so I was to leave around 2. Okay, all clear. My boss wrote an email when I was leaving, so they knew when I was to arrive. They confirmed all was set. I was there just after 3. I was to leave the package, no can do. Their lady manager was to check it and then notify my boss if some documents are missing. So where is she? I missed her. Whole 5 to 10 minutes. And I was to wait for her because not one person in the other company knows which documents were in the package. But it's all good. She'll be back in 15 minutes, not to worry. And don't tell your boss. That part was weird. So I grabbed my phone, wrote a message, something like, there's a misunderstanding, sending email, then a detailed email with description, but not blaming the other company. There must be a misunderstanding because, and here I put what they told me. The timestamp was 3:03, so I was definitely not late. What was even more weird, my boss checked the reply from lady manager, she confirmed, not an employee, the lady in person. So I sat there, grabbed a book on my phone, all perfectly fine. Some 30 minutes later, my boss asks if I delivered the documents. No lady manager around. I asked and they weren't allowed to call her, but there's no need to notify my boss. They were sure she'd be here any minute. So I wrote another text, no lady manager around, sending email, added detailed description, including their statement they weren't allowed, and kept waiting. Next 30 minutes, no lady boss. My boss called them, they pretty much repeated what they kept telling me. I added another email, boss, I listened to your conversation, they aren't happy, but I couldn't wait outside. They insisted I was not to wander around with the documents. Got, not a problem, do what they suggest and notify me immediately. I kept waiting. They wanted to get me a mineral water, I declined, wrote to my boss, got an email back. Close to 4:40, the lady manager barges in. Why wasn't I earlier as they decided? I grab my phone, read the timestamp, read the email with set conditions. She went reddish purple, got the package, I can go. I'm sorry, I can't go. I was told repeatedly she was to check if the documents aren't missing. She insists, I write a text to my boss. She doesn't want to check documents, sending email, and I read the message. She was not happy, but at last decided to check the documents. I thanked her, waited for her to email my boss, and wrote another email immediately. Left only when my boss wrote back that she really confirmed all the documents were in the package. Later, she contacted the owner and blamed us. So it was my luck that I wrote all the emails so religiously, and when the owner called my boss all furious, it was easy to deliver copies. My boss asked me today to his office and let me read emails to and from the owner of the other company. There was a lawyer who explained that in normal circumstances, I wouldn't be allowed to read it, but the lady manager insisted we did something wrong, especially me. And as it was also about me, I was to read this even if I wasn't the recipient. They also asked me to print the emails directly from my email account and screenshots from my mobile, plus write a detailed note from all of this including timestamps from my emails, which I did. I don't know what it was. A weird power play? A way to discredit the other company? I don't even know if it was a malicious compliance or not. Sorry. I don't think my boss or the lawyer will tell me more. Possibly if they try to sue, but why should they? OP did the exact right thing here. If somebody tells you you don't need to write this down or not to tell anybody else about something, especially in the business world, when you're at a completely different company, write it down immediately. There's some nefarious crap going on here. We really need a subreddit for stories like this that's like r/cover-your-butt. This story comes to us from Sunburnt. Waste not, want not. I think this counts as malicious compliance, but honestly, the ending was positive for everyone involved, so take that as you will. I started working as a waitress in a dine-in pizza and pasta restaurant. The food was really overpriced for the quality, but they got away with it because it was the only place open late near the cinema. And also the portions were extremely oversized by Australian standards. But we didn't have many regular patrons, so people would be shocked by how big their plates of pasta were. And since nobody could finish it, it produced a ton of food waste. The first time I went to management to ask them if I could give a cardboard takeaway container to a dine-in customer, they told me sternly, well, it's okay this time since they asked for one, but don't hand them out unless the customer specifically requests it. They are really expensive. FYI, they were not really expensive, management were just stingy, and also generally among the meanest bosses I've had. And don't ask me why they were okay with the cost of food waste. I guess they felt it gave them a good image to give large serves. Anyway, I really hated to see all this waste each day, and it was clear that the customers did too. So whenever I cleared a table with a large amount of food left, and the customers were looking regretful about it, I would say quietly, you know, we do have takeaway boxes available in case you would like to request one. Just let me know if you'd like to request one. Almost invariably, they would be grateful, like, oh, that would be amazing. I felt so bad wasting all that food. I didn't know we had the option to ask for a box. Thank you. I think realistically, the fallout was a positive one for the restaurant since some of these customers did indeed become regulars and didn't mind paying the exorbitant prices if it took care of their lunch the next day. However, the management did ask me what was up and why we were going through so many containers. I said, I don't know, people just keep requesting them all the time lately. I guess people are becoming much more conscious of food waste. The zero waste movement was actually taking off at the time, so I got away with nothing more than a raised eyebrow from the boss. I don't know if doggy bags aren't standard practice where OP's from, but if I go to a restaurant and they give me a ton of food and I don't eat it all, I'm definitely asking for a box to take it home. I paid for that food, you're not throwing it out, and I can have it for lunch tomorrow. If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to the favorites on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.